Senator, we're grateful for your accessibility, grateful for your service, grateful that you make such a great effort to represent us as a body and as a state. All too often, we feel like as a state and as communities and as families, we've been herded on to this great federal cruise ship. And the party has seemed great for a long time on a credit card and the food without limit and the fun and all the rest, but now it seems all too much like we're floating on, the power's gone out and we're floating on this great federal petri dish, fiscally and regulatory basis. As you mentioned, 2/3 of our lands are controlled by the federal government, and we just heard this morning in Natural Resources that when the federal government manages the lands, we return $5 for every dollar invested. But when the states manage the lands, we return $45 for every dollar invested. Institute for Energy Research said we have conservatively $150 trillion in just mineral value in the public lands, and we have western states now running various versions of the transfer of public lands legislation that we did last year to lead out on. My question, Senator, is what more can we be doing to move forward so that we do get to the resources to responsibly manage them, to educate kids and take care of sick people and poor people and public safety and roads when we're seeing a cruise ship adrift and awash that we're lost on? And then what needs to happen in D.C. to move this forward to help make that happen?
Great question. So I think a lot of what we need to do as Westerners who live with this problem is to help educate our own neighbors here within the state and also educate people outside the state so that they know what the difference is between states like ours and states like, say, New York. In our state, the federal government owns and controls about 2/3 of the land. In New York, it's less than 0.5%. In every state east of the Rocky Mountains, the federal government owns less than 15% of the land mass. In every state, Rocky Mountains and west, the federal government owns 15% or more, and in many states like ours, it's several times that. And so people need to understand that there is a difference. Now, we do, of course, benefit from having public land. We'll be the first to acknowledge here in Utah that our public lands benefit us in many ways. We enjoy the recreational opportunities they give us. We enjoy having some of the conservation interests protected on public lands. And at the same time, we sometimes have to acknowledge that there is a balance that needs to occur, a balance that recognizes that in some counties in our state, the county, which is the principal property taxing authority, lacks the capacity to tax 90%, sometimes more than 95% of the land, because that's the amount of land in their county that's federal. And when that happens, there is a real cost to people who are struggling to figure out how to run their school systems, to figure out how to keep law enforcement and the fire departments running. And we need to help educate people about what we could do with this land and the fact that the objective is not to sell it all off, not to commercialize every acre of it, but to use it responsibly. It's not that federal land managers are not capable. It's not that they're not well-intentioned. I think they're capable, well-intentioned people. It's that no institution, in my mind, can really maximize the utility of all of that land, of that amount of land. That is a huge volume of land, and I'm not sure that any one institution is up to the task of doing it, especially because land in one state or one region of the country differs dramatically from that in another. And so we have to be able to explain to other people here in the state and people outside the state that there certainly are significant benefits that accompany public land. But number one, we have to ask the question from time to time, does it all need to be federal? Number two, do we really need that much of it? Number three, what are the costs of doing it? Number four, when we do decide to have the federal government own that much of the land, who bears the cost? Who pays for it? People are quick to point out that the citizens in every part of the country, whether they're in New York or Connecticut or Florida or Utah or Alaska or New Mexico, they all benefit from public land. That's true. But we're paying for it more here, and it's not being offset by the federal government. One of the ways that we can help bring attention to this disparity is by asking the federal government to fully fund PILT to the point that the payment in lieu of taxes actually represents some rough approximation of what private property owners would pay in property taxes, so that we're not paying for the benefit of having federal public land that somebody in New York is benefiting from when they don't have to pay for it.
Thank you.